Hi, I recently watched the Pink Floyd Live at Pompeii movie in cinemas, and I have some thoughts. I couldn't see the IMAX version because it wasn't available in my area, so I had to do with the version with a terrible aspect ratio, which third of the screen was just nothing, was just black. But the movie itself is very good. Now, the interesting thing about it is that it starts with the first half of Echoes, and then it ends with the second half of Echoes. And if you're a Pink Floyd fan like me, you have probably seen this performance of Echoes because I think it's one of their most legendary performances ever. I don't get how David Gilmour makes his guitar sound like that on this version of Echoes. It sounds like it's God himself talking to us with a message of hope and peace and prosperity. I don't get how David Gilmour made his guitar sound like a call from God, but here we are. And I don't get how he does it. One part of the performance is just David Gilmour overloading your senses with his beautiful guitar work, and then it gets into the very groovy part, and then it's just whale noises all around. And I think this is a very good performance of Echoes, probably the best one they've ever done live. The other songs in this movie are from their earlier albums shown here. These are probably the best performances of each respective song they've done. Don't go into the movie expecting, The Wall, Animals. This is their earlier, more psychedelic, more experimental era. I guess you could call it experimental, from, David Gilmour making random noises on his guitar and from Nick Mason replaying the same short drum pattern to some of the most beautiful compositions they've ever done. The transition between those two is very interesting, to say the least. This album has such beautiful harmonies and such beautiful compositions, and then at some point Roger Waters just gets bored of being a productive member of the band and playing bass guitar, and he just bangs on a gong, and it kind of works too, so that's interesting. And then you have a song which I can't pronounce the name of, but it's pretty much like Seamus on Metal with a dog singing. I know that this movie was recorded after Metal was out already, but why was Seamus on the album Metal not more like this version they play in the movie? This sounds so much better. Seamus is kind of a forgettable, it's a gimmick song, and I'm not particularly a fan of gimmick songs, but in this movie, and I don't get why they didn't perform it like this on the album. This sounds so much better. The interesting thing about this movie is that it separates the different songs in it with bits of studio footage. Some of them is having lunch in the Abbey Road studios in the cantina, and then they have some footage of them recording Dark Side of the Moon. And I'm pretty sure that this movie was recorded after Dark Side of the Moon was already finished, but it's still interesting to see regardless, because there's not much footage of artists from that era recording things in the studio. There's a bit of Supertramp recording Breakfast in America, for example, but there's not much footage of big major artists working on some of their most recognizable, famous albums. It was very good. I would recommend you watch it if you're a bit of a Pink Floyd fan like me.